Week 5 is in the books for the summer 23 season, and we really saw it all on the court, guys. We had one game finish in a 1-point margin. And as I just said before we went live, I was doing the math. It was a 69-point win to kick off week 5. So if you were thinking there was going to be some rust after, a 2-week layoff, leave it to the game breakers to improve to 5-0 in dominating fashion over an undermanned Duyer's boys team. And that'll kind of be the theme for our post-game show here, guys. I mean, the Duyer's boys missing 2 of their key players. Lob City still not. We didn't see 9 guys there or even close to 9 guys for them. They were still missing some key players. The halfway Crooks without one of their key players. And that game, Lob City and the halfway Crooks, is where we're going to start. We have Ian, Nick, and Sydney standing by, but the 1-point game is definitely where we should start. And we're going to talk about, the end of game situations when we get to our second game between the Air Mambas and Rhode Island Warriors. So we'll get to that in a second, but it is Lob City improving to 4-1. They are one of 2 4-1 teams through week 5 as they hold on, and they were in control and the halfway Crooks were having to foul, but then some 3-pointers from Dom Langston down the stretch, which we haven't seen yet in Rhode Island from him. He has played in the Connecticut League and can hit some threes. And he's like, yeah, he's back. That's what he said. He said he's got his shot back. So good for the Crooks. But it is Lob City winning by 1, like I talked about. And Jose Mercado, speaking of 3-point shooting, it's what I get, right? A couple weeks ago, we're on the show saying let him shoot. And I still think it's the right plan. So I'm not necessarily upset, but the first thing I checked, 8 for 18 for Jose, I believe 41 points. Yeah, 41 points on 15 of 30 shooting for Jose. And, when you have a game like that, he's definitely the key for Lob City. So we'll go in order on my screen, Ian first, and then we'll flip the order for the other games. But Ian, 6 guys for Lob City, 7 guys for the Crooks, and, Coach Joey took over. But what from Lob City? And it really was that fourth quarter because it was close throughout. And then they were able to kind of build a lead. And by a lead, I mean 5, 6, 7 points, range in that fourth quarter. But what did they do and what impressed you, Ian, that allowed Lob City to get the win and improve to 4-1?
Yeah, Lob City made a really close game. But as you start to see things sort of go to hand point wise, Jose would just pull up in transition and just make a 3-pointer. We do it back to back, just pull up in transition, not even hesitating. So as you see there, he had 41 points, 24 of them coming from behind the arc. But they were able to hold on to it and played some clutch defense. And in Nuri's post-game interview, he stated that they're just unstoppable. And as he said, they're better in every aspect when going up against any team. So we'll see if they can make another repeat this year.
Yeah, and again, shout out Carl Lee, 25 points and 12 rebounds, and always kind of was keeping plays alive for them down low. And we'll go to Nick next. And Nick, I'll make you talk about the halfway Crooks a little bit, but you can go, whichever direction you'd like. But we'll get to their box score in a second. I mean, for a team that the podcast we'll shout them out, called a balanced team. It was balanced. It was balanced yet again, as you see the box score there. But like I talked about, Dominique Langston, great game and kind of was one of, along with Jared Hansen and even Taj made some big plays. I can list the entire team if you want, but Dom Langston was, from my vantage point anyway, kind of the leader and played most of the game and was playing defense, helping on the boards. But Nick, what about the halfway Crooks? And then you can get to Lob City if you want, but what about the halfway Crooks, impressed you against, a Lob City team that is the favorites until someone takes them out in the playoffs, right? So what impressed you, Nick?
I think the energy you guys brought. I mean, like you said, if we go down the list individually, everybody played their part. But as a team, I mean, Jared Hansen, who I feel like we don't talk about a lot or enough, made 2 and 1 layups that were massive. He also hit from deep. Dom Langston was doing his thing. And while all that was going on, the entire bench was standing up, going crazy. They were cheering, they were leading, they were instructing, doing everything to get the entire team moving. And I feel like momentum wise, you could definitely see a swing. There's times when you guys were leading, and I wouldn't call it fear that I saw in Lob City, but it was they definitely, in my opinion, seem to get a wake-up call. They saw the momentum shifting, and it kind of, you could see it. You could definitely see it, and you can feel it. And I think that's largely to do with the bench.
Yeah, and I think that's a credit to Lob City, and we'll go to Sydney in a second. But that fear, I think, is strong. But I understand your point. They can sense the moment, and I think Lob City as a team in those moments, as we saw, go, okay, like this is not happening right now. You know, like let's get it together here for a second, and they would kind of regain the lead by a couple points, and not necessarily relax at that point, but kind of like go back into their mode. You know, Lob City mode. And then, like you talked about, yeah, it was a game of swings for sure. And even looking at that top box score before we take it off the screen, I mean, pretty even. You know, no team was really able to get a lead, and even heading into the fourth, I believe halfway had a lead going into the fourth quarter. And that the numbers might be wrong on that box score, but I believe it was a 2-point lead or a 1-point lead for halfway Crooks. And so that just goes to show that final quarter was everything. And Sydney, even just, you know, from this game, and, you know, two teams that hopefully we'll see again. I was talking to Cody after the game, and one quote from him was, yeah, Dom Langston's pretty good. I was like, yeah, he played very well and is very good. But the one thing I said back to Cody was, hope to see you again. And so I'll touch on some of the missing pieces as we wrap it up. But Sydney, what stood out to you?
I think for Lob City, Nuri definitely took like a coaching style like you did, but on the court, there was definitely times where he was yelling at Jose to like just shoot it or to go for it while he was hanging back on defense. Probably that fear factor a little, trying to stop halfway Crooks from getting like an easy break or something, because he was hanging out there to try and stop that. But definitely putting faith in his team that they could get the points that they needed and get that offense that they really had going for them.
Yeah, and even just to touch on some of the missing players. So no Jeff Winchell for the halfway Crooks, the reigning defensive player of the year. So when it comes to that size that Lob City kind of was able to have at their advantage in this one, we would like to think Jeff would, you know, help with some of that down there for the halfway Crooks. And when I said that to Cody, and it's not an excuse, he said, yep, we didn't have Colin or Greg or Victor either. You know, Victor Cachu, Greg Holt, and Colin Burns, who, respect, you know, they were missing player as well. So, you know, players as well from this game, as they have for most of the season. So it's definitely a different game with both teams fully there. But one thing, if Cody didn't agree, I'm going to say he agreed that, you know, us not having Jeff matters a little more than them not having Colin or them, because of the other players that Lob City does have. And when Jose makes, you know, 3 or 4 threes in a row in one of those moments that Nick, you know, talked about, when it kind of was starting to, you know, you could feel the momentum shift, and then Jose of all people is hitting threes, you know, that's all right. You know, good game by him, 41 points, like I talked about. And just to kind of set up our transition, you know, to the Rhode Island Warriors and Air Mambas game, which was the other close game also going on at 8 o'clock. It was the halfway Crooks down by 6 with a minute or so left. And then they were actually down by 7 with 34 seconds left. And we're still able to nearly have a chance to tie it. We were trying to follow with 3 seconds left, and then Lob City played keep away, but Lob City could have been up 3. We could have had the ball back. So just keep that in mind as we kind of go over this game for the Air Mambas. A 7-point lead with 34 seconds left. And you just got to play the foul game a little bit, or just pretend to trap and then let Jose go down and dunk on Devin Devampina, whatever. I mean, that also, I guess, works too. Sorry, Devin, kind of set him up for that one. But let's get to the Air Mambas, who do come up short against the Rhode Island Warriors, 71-59. And it was a 5 or 6 point game with 3.5 to go. And I'll kind of give you the recap on this one. But the one thing I noticed from watching the games live on YouTube, which you can do, youtube.com/legacy leagues, or our court 3 games have been on our Instagram, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. The crowd over there, you know, it was a good atmosphere for both games, to be honest. But the crowd in the videos for court 3, you can tell, and it was fun. It was that's what it's about over there. But end of the third, a 2-point game. Marvin Dowdell had a huge game, and I promise I'll get to some of these guys. Let our analysts chime in a second. But 27 points for Marvin Dowdell, and 6 threes, and he hit some big threes in the fourth quarter. But the Rhode Island Warriors kind of built on that lead early in the fourth. They're going up by 6 with 8 to go. They were up by as many as 8 with 4.5 to go. And it was really Anthony Ramsey and Olajide Rowland kind of keeping him in it. Mario Valerio at 28 points and some rainmaker threes from him. But 4 for 16 from three. I'm sure he would have liked to have a couple of those back, but it was a 6-point game with 4.5 to go. And this gets me to my monologue for the Air Mambas, who I hope will listen. But 3:30 left, and you can kind of see the Warriors, playing a little keep away, maybe a little earlier than the Air Mambas would have liked, that's for sure. But I will say in the video, because I wasn't watching live, and we did have a conversation after the game with the Air Mambas about, the end of game clock situation. The ref, to his credit, was counting for closely guarded. So when there's no shot clock, which there isn't in the legacy leagues, we do have a rule, just like in a lot of high school leagues, where, because that wouldn't be fair if a team really could just stand there and run the clock out. So if they're closely guarded, within within an arm's length, they have 5 seconds to either get rid of the ball or pick up their dribble, or it would be a turnover, just like a shot clock violation. So there is a way, without getting a steal, for the defense to get the ball back. And it was being enforced, is my point. You could see the ref counting it off. So just made that note. Then with 2.5 left, Charles Alexander did go in and get fouled. So it's not like they ran down the last 3.5, just for the record. And then he went in and got a dunk. And then the Mambas fouled Aiden Dozois with 2:15 left, and he made them both to put him back up by 8. They go back and forth, foul game a little bit, and then the Warriors kind of dribbled it out after the Air Mambas missed some shots. So I'll get the stats up here in a second, and we'll throw it to these guys. But all of that to say, it wasn't as bad as they made it sound to me after the game. And sure, no one likes to lose, trust me. And winning in this league is harder than any other league. Maybe that's a stretch, but it's hard. Even when you're a good team, it's not easy to win, which makes the losses even worse. And I've had this conversation with PJ, who shares the sentiment, and I will agree with him on that. But I'll put the stats up here in a second. And I know our analysts weren't over there for this one, and they did some of their homework. But anybody want to chime in on the Rhode Island Warriors, who do improve to 4-1 with the win? And we talked a lot about them heading into the break, being able to kind of get maybe 6-2, 7-1 because of their schedule and some of the games they've played. But anything on the Warriors, who, as you see there, a huge second half, a huge fourth quarter to improve to 4-1.
Yeah, I think the Warriors are going to be a big threat in the playoffs. And every week, although I wasn't able to see this game, but I've seen the previous games, and every week it's always Marvin Charles at the top of the box scores. So if there's like a dynamic duo award or something, they're definitely up there, maybe behind Joe Secatore and Gian, but they're running the show every week. They're both on the court together. So it's nice to watch them play.
Oh, yeah. And you can see there on the screen, but 62% field goal percentage for Marvin Dowdell and 50% from three. So shooting it very well. Charles Alexander, 55% nearly field goal percentage, and only 1 for 6 from three, but doesn't usually take those as much. So great shooting by both of them. And as we get to the Air Mambas, and Nick or Sydney, if you want to chime in, just cut me off. And if not, it's all good. But Mario with 28, Olajide Rowland and Anthony Ramsey. I think if we had a big 3 award, they'd be in the running for that. I think they're 3 really good players, and they're in all of these games. Like I'm excited to see the rest of the season and even them in the playoffs. I think they're figuring it out, it's going to depend on some matchups and having some things go their way. I mean, they shot 40% from the floor as a team. So I just mentioned how good of shooting, it was for Marvin and Charles, and talk about the Mambas team not as good. And I'm sure that contributed to it. But anything else for this game before we get to our last 2 a little more quickly? Nick?
I would say, just speaking on Mario Valerio and the game itself, I mean, he's able to, obviously he's one of the best shooters in the league. And I think 4 for 16 doesn't do his shooting justice. I mean, Marvin went 6 for 12. If Mario can just hit a similar amount of threes, and take a similar shooting percentage from 3 like Marvin did, which he's definitely able and capable to do, then I don't think this game really pulls away the way that it does and finishes how it does. So I think in an alternate universe, in a separate week, Mario is definitely able to lead his team and shoot a little better from 3, and a different outcome could potentially have happened.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he was playing out of his mind. And like I talked about in my monologue, Marvin Dowdell, in that fourth quarter helped build that lead for his team. And that's nothing against Charles Alexander, who's been great every single week. But in this game, it kind of kickstarted that run for the Rhode Island Warriors. Like I said, who improved to 4-1, and it is the Air Mambas 0-5. We'll get to our other 0-5 team in a second. Let's get to the Game Breakers and the Duyes boys, who were that 69-point margin. And again, like we talked about, no Brian Yars, no Des Williams. So the Duyes boys missing, like PJ said, 50 points between the two of them on most nights. So that's almost the margin. And obviously, as things get out of hand, both teams start scoring probably more than they would have in a normal game. But I'll get the box score up here in a second. I mean, the Game Breakers, let's spend some time on them, even though we kind of already, touched on two other games. I mean, 5-0. Gian has already expressed he is ready for next week. Like, of course he is. If people see purple, Jose, makes 8 of them. Great. And Gian already reminded me last year, he couldn't shoot, he was shooting and it was MVP last year. So he knows what I mean by this, but his 3-point shooting was not there. And then he plays the halfway crooks around this time last summer and makes 7 of them. Just very similar to the Jose experience we just had in week 5. But for the Game Breakers, you guys talk about the big two. They had 4 players with over 20 points in this one. So we'll go Sydney first and let her chime in on the Game Breakers, who are the lone undefeated and have 2 tough games coming up. And I'm not even just saying that in the halfway crooks, and then Lob City again in week 7. But Sydney in this one, they take care of business and smack down the Duyes boys.
Yeah, I think Game Breakers definitely have the team dynamic going down where they can connect with each other, and they even make fun of each other when they're missing shots and they get on each other's cases. So I think it inspires them to try and beat their own team, which I think can help in a game where it's not as close, to keep them going. So I think that definitely was a factor in them getting to over 60 or that 69-point win right there.
Yeah, and I'll give Ian the hard task on this one, and then Nick and Sydney can fight it out for the last game. But touching on the Duyes boys, and I mean we'll scroll up here for everybody watching in a second. I just wanted to see 35-19 after the first quarter, and then it continued to get out of hand from there. But Ian, for the Duyes boys, and it was the week of players being on vacation, being hurt, having work, whatever it is. They had some people try to step up, and I want to see the 40% from the floor against the Game Breakers, who just ran to the rim all night. But for the Duyes boys, I mean, what can they take from this game? And we know they're going to be in the mix with their guys back, but it just stinks they didn't have them in week 5.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't hear them. They were definitely missing their vocal leader and Shane Patrick, so that's one of the guys they were missing. But I mean, they still had 8 people on their team able to show up. And after a great week 1 for Lucas Pinocchia, he's had a little bit of rougher games going forward. He only shot 20% this game, but I mean, they definitely have the chemistry. But now they know what they're getting themselves into with the Game Breaker. So going forward, they'll know how to plan better and play better. And definitely once they're fully strength, we'll see what they can do.
All right, and Nick gets the easy one, for this game. But what do you take away about the Game Breakers, about the Duyes boys? But anything as we, I'll give you a week 6 preview for who these teams play in a second. But Nick, go ahead.
I just think the pace of play that you see the Game Breakers play with has been unmatched so far this season. It doesn't seem like anybody can keep up. Even it was a 50-point game in the second half, and they were still pressing. And whether they were pressing just to get the ball and get pad their stats, or B, get highlights, or C, just because that's how they play, whatever the reason was, they still did it. And Duyes boys and every other team the past 4 weeks hasn't been able to really match it. So I think if somebody is going to beat the Game Breakers, in order to do it, they're going to have to find a way to slow them down, which admittedly, I have no idea how you do that, but you're going to have to find a way.
Yeah, and I think protecting the rim, I mean, Lob City, I think possibly unlocked some of that, right? I can't remember how close that game was. Hold on one second. I mean, yeah, 13-point game, and that's right. The Lob City was able to cut it to 5 at the end of the third, and then the Game Breakers kind of turned it back on. So they didn't really expose as much as I maybe remember, but there's a formula there, right? And so we'll see if in week 6 against the halfway crooks, anything is revealed against the Game Breakers, or in that rematch in week 7 against Lob City, which those are just 2 teams full of good basketball players. So we'll see what happens. But speaking on this one, the Duyes boys fall to 2-3, and so they are they are fifth in the standings, even though they have the same record as the Ice Treys, who we'll get to in a second after they took care of business in week 5. Both teams 2-3. And just to kind of give you that schedule look ahead really quick, the Duyes boys do get Lob City next week. So when I kind of keep talking about the last time we were here after games, we talked about second half, kind of splitting the season in half and who plays who when. The Rhode Island Warriors kind of have a little bit of an easier schedule after the break. The Duyes boys get Game Breakers, Lob City, halfway Crooks again. And so, they're 2-3 right now. They do own that tiebreaker over the Ice Treys because when they played, the Duyes boys did win by 3. So at least, for them to fall to 6, which I think that's where you don't want to be. Just because then it's a 3-6 matchup where you're getting the Warriors. Maybe you do. I don't want to play the halfway Crooks in the playoffs, but that's just me. That's my saying. We'll bring it back early. But because the halfway Crooks will probably be 4-3, who knows? But that's where the Duyes boys are kind of looming right now with some of those games coming up. I talked about the Ice Treys, and these guys are smiling because they've never heard the halfway Crooks slander. My team has been like, whatever. We've been 2-3 like the Duyes boys, and I'm like, you don't want to play us in the playoffs, don't. And I start spouting. The Ice Treys did win in week 5. They took care of Ball Don't Lie, and they improved to 2-3 like I talked about. So they are clearly in 6th in the standings and are fighting with the Duyes boys, but we will go, I don't know who's going to have the harder one first this time. We'll go Ian first, and we'll let him we'll give him the easier one because I gave him the challenge last time. So Ian, the Ice Treys, I want to find the right score. Ice Treys had 5 players in double figures and 22-10 first quarter, and then really kind of just continued to build on their lead. It was never really, in my opinion, close where teams were kind of playing. It was kind of just a lot of back and forth, and the Ice Treys, took advantage. So what do you take away for this one about the Ice Treys, Ian?
Yeah, I think this one's going to help them maybe gain some momentum. And they were also missing one of their key players, Tyler Santana. But as far as Ball Don't Lie, I don't think they've gained that chemistry yet. And it's definitely not a help that they didn't have a single sub. So we'll see if they can pick up a win in the following weeks.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in before I give you guys. So Marvin Dowdell just sent us a message. He goes, I don't know, man. In those late quarters, I took over. It's exactly what I was saying. So it's so funny that it popped up on my phone. So yeah, the Ice Treys, not to slight them at all. Nick Lemoyne, 27 points, 12 rebounds, a huge game. Seth Coates down low doing his thing. And we saw Terrence Gallo, just one of my favorite players to watch. And he'll be back in the dunk contest. I mean, he had tip slams. He's like taken off from farther than you'd expect. And that's why he wins the dunk contest. So we'll see this year because I've already, I'm sure he'll do it again. He's great that he does that for us. And Joe Secator's eyes lit up when I talked about a dunk contest. So I'm in. I'm in on that, on those two plus others for the dunk contest. But you guys can work together on this one. I don't know. We'll go Sydney first. So you get to talk about Ball Don't Lie. And they're 0-5. They're one of our 2 0-5 teams. They're going to play the Air Mambas at some point. So that game, I think it's next week. But they will play as we kind of take a look at Ball Don't Lie. What have you seen from the beginning of the season to now with them? And 4 players. So that's tough first for them, for any team, especially, in a game like this. But what stood out about Ball Don't Lie and what can they do as they get ready to take on a team like the Air Mambas to try to get their first win?
Yeah, so Ball Don't Lie, not the strongest team, but having 4 players, they definitely worked to their advantage a little where they were taking their timeouts to try and slow the game down and definitely rest their players. So you can definitely see them trying to strategize more and definitely working out what works for them. Ella's shooting only 35% from 3-pointer, but when he can hit them, that really helps out his team. Along with Kevin, he wasn't shooting as much as well. But I feel like when they're shooting, they can get some of those shots in. But definitely trying to work together. They definitely have good ball movement and they're connecting better as a team. Again, having 4 players was a little tough for them, but I can see their chemistry is coming along more and they're definitely starting to work together and find out what game plan works for them.
Yeah, and I think, I've talked with Ellis, all right, let's just shoot a ton of threes. I've been go that route, just go all in on the threes. They didn't do it this game necessarily because I don't think 34 is enough, and I'm not the expert by any means, but shoot 60 field goal attempts 45 of them, I mean, minus layups, need to be threes. And I would just try to arbitrage it that way, right? But even if you do that, if you're going to shoot 26, 30% as a team, it still may not be enough, right? So they're going to have to just make shots, and make more of them. And I would prefer them be threes, right? And then I think that's a way that they can maybe overcome some of the lack of size that they have when they take on a team like the Air Mambas, because the Air Mambas, like we've talked about, have those 3 players and 2 of them play bigger. That was one of the things I noticed, right? They play bigger, they rebound, they play down low, and that can give ball don't lie some problems. So to overcome that, it's going to be the 3-pointers. Nick, do you want to touch on this one, or do you want to be first for one of my favorite games that we play on the post-game show?
I can comment on this quick.
Okay.
I mean, you really said everything that I was thinking. One thing I would say for ball don't lie is 14 turnovers is not ideal for any team. And I mean, compared to the 8 that Ice Treys had, you, especially with only 4 players, you're already at a disadvantage just by playing down without any subs. Turning the ball over and being winded and tired, and it's going to be tough to get back on defense on those fast breaks. Being able to clean that up, I think, would be massive. And then on top of, like you said, they just keep shooting and eventually they'll fall, then they can win.
And so our favorite game that we talk about on this show is our one-word game. So you're all gonna be put on the spot. Surprise. It's okay. You guys will do great. But you can say a little more than one word, but I do want you to reveal your one word for each matchup of week 6. So I will give you the matchup. We're going to go right in order. So if you want to start preparing quickly, they look nervous, but they'll pull it together on this. So for week 6, I think these are all going to be some good games. I mean, whoever did the schedule deserves, something to kind of keep the interest in this league. I mean, week 6, things get a little stale and, we got some awesome matchups, but I'll give you all the matchups quick for those that are listening, and then we'll kind of get our one word for each matchup and we'll get out of here. So kicking off the night, Duyer's boys 2-3, as we talked about, taking on Lob City, who improved to 4-1. I don't think the Duyer's boys are necessarily a 2-3 team, so I'm interested. I'm in. At 8 o'clock, All Don't Lie and the Air Mambas. So there you go, our matchup of 0-5 teams. So we talked about kind of Ball Don't Lie's game plan for that one. The Halfway Crooks and the Game Breakers as well at 8 o'clock. 2 teams that we've already talked about near the top of the standings. And the Rhode Island Warriors at 9 o'clock take on the Ice Treys. So, and that game, I think because of the personnel and the way those teams could match up, I'm in. And I mean, I'm there anyway. I mean, I might as well try to pitch you guys on being in, right? But let's start with the Duyer's boys and Lob City. Nick did get off the hook. He did kind of chime in, but he's still going to go first here for his one word when he thinks of Duyer's boys and Lob City.
I would say the one that comes to mind is loud.
All right. How come? Give me a.
I mean, I can't think of 2 teams that talk more, if I'm being honest. And whether they're losing, whether they're winning, whether it's physical, no matter the game, both teams are always talking. I don't have a technical counter, but I have a feeling both those teams are close to the top. So I would say loud.
Yeah, I know someone who does have a technical foul counter. Just me. But yes, we'll see. And I think if both of these teams come at close to full strength, and for the Duyer's boys, they need their 2 leaders back. I think it can show us some things. I'm in. Sydney, your one word for that one, Duyer's boys and Lob City.
I'm going to say big. I'm expecting both teams to play big games, get in that paint. Definitely. I think Duyer's boys will probably shoot a little more than Lob City will, but I think they're still going to work on getting big players into the paint.
Ian?
Yeah, I was going to say physical. I think the Duyer's boys do have a few bigger guys, but other than that, they like to space the floor and have some smaller guys. So I think Lob City's going to use their aggressiveness and big body physicality and take advantage of the Duyer's boys when it comes to that physicality aspect. So
yeah, I don't usually play along. I'll go defense only because I think that's the key for the Duyer's boys. And I think if Lob City is able to parade, as we saw it with the Game Breakers this week, and I know it hopefully will be a different type of game. Yeah, parade could have been my one word. Wow, I ruined it. That would have been so good. All right, let's go to our second game in the schedule here in order. We'll do Ball Don't Lie in the Air Mambas. We'll go backwards. So Ian, your one word for Ball Don't Lie in Air Mambas.
Win. Someone's gonna get a win. Someone's finally gonna have that in the win column. So I don't know. I'm gonna put my money on the Air Mambas and have Mario lead him to a win, but we'll see. We'll see if Ball Don't Lie comes back with a few extra subs this time. But someone will finally get a win.
Yeah, and we'll see the line for this one. I would expect if I know Dan making those lines, I mean it's going to be Air Mambas. I would assume by 5, 6, or 7. I mean that's my thing, but it doesn't mean it won't be close. Yeah, Sydney would be next if I'm being fair. Your one word for that one.
Shooters. I think this one's gonna definitely be a lot at the 3-point line. Just who can hit their shots and who can get those in. Definitely take those opportunities when they're given to them.
All right, Nick.
I would say passion. I think both teams' eyes are lighting up at next week. I think they both know that next week is the week that they could get a win. And I think both of them are going to try and fight very hard and both want it really bad.
All right, love it. Let's get to our next one, the halfway Crooks. 3-2 in the game breakers, undefeated. Sydney first this time. Why not? And again, this is, I didn't give a word for the last one. That's okay. This is your chance to suck up. I like to just make it clear that they do have the opportunity to kind of, say the right thing, and they don't always. They're getting on to my ways. But Sydney, your one word for the halfway Crooks and game breakers.
Pace. I think halfway Crooks is definitely going to try and determine the pace of this game and try and slow game breakers down a little bit and get their offense off and hopefully dictate a little bit of that game.
Yes, for sure. Ian.
I'm gonna go with transition. Game breakers like the planned transition. We'll see if the halfway Crooks can stop them in transition. And yeah.
Yep. Nick.
I would say excitement. I think game breakers, I think they prefer tougher matchups. And I think halfway Crooks are excited to play them. I think they have a good chance at beating them. And I think they want to prove it. And just from a fan aspect, in my opinion, I think it's going to be the most exciting game. I think it's going to be the closest game. And the one I most want to watch. So.
All right. Well, and I think I owe Nick because I think so either way, I think Nick gets to pick. Yeah, at some point. Sorry. So I mean, Nick will be on court 1. Let's put it out there. I will go one word and I will not give an explanation. My one word is Carlton, and you guys can figure out what I mean by that. We'll get on to the next game here. The last game, the Rhode Island Warriors and Ice Treys at 9 o'clock. So like we talked about, maybe not the closest teams in the standings necessarily, but a game that these teams haven't played before, to kind of newer teams. So we'll go Ian first again. I don't know. Rhode Island Warriors and Ice Treys.
I'm gonna go with chemistry. Obviously, Marvin and Charles have chemistry, and I think the Ice Treys all around have pretty good chemistry. So this is gonna be a battle. I think this will actually be a fairly close game. So we'll see who pulls out on top.
Sydney.
I'm gonna pick defense for this one. I think Ice Treys are really good at getting those offensive rebounds and following up. So if Warriors can take those away from them and get more defense, it's better for them, I feel like.
All right, Nick.
I'll say jumping. I think both teams love to make highlight reels. I think both teams love to dunk. And I also think both teams aren't afraid to jump in front of the dunk. So I'm excited to see what is going to come from that.
Yeah, I wish I was more prepared for this game because I could have came up with like some funny words. I don't know. I could have, I really didn't know I was doing this until 6.5 minutes ago. But my one sound for this game would be like the roar of the crowd. So instead of me doing it, you know what I mean by that, because yes, I expect some Charles Alexander dunks. I expect some high flying dunks, hopefully from Terrence Gallo and Nick Lemoyne on the icebreakers. So I think this one could be a show. That's it. That's it for week 5. We did it. They did all right with the one word. I mean, for being put on the spot and it being, over a month into this thing, they did all right. Good job, guys, on the show. Thanks everybody for watching. And as always, the games will be live on YouTube again next week. Might be trying some Facebook Live. We're going to see if the app that we use wants to work. But either way, we'll be back with top plays, 2-minute drill, and everything else as we have 3 weeks left of the summer 23 season. And still some, playoff seeds up for grabs, but we can't wait for a loaded week 6. Again, whoever does that schedule, knows what they're doing. So we will see you in week 6.